Nobody moves. That is the first thing Dorothy registers, the absolute cathedral-wide paralysis that follows Gregory's words, as though the wolf magic woven into the ancient stones has absorbed the declaration and is still deciding what to do with it. 300 witnesses, not one breath between them. The elder at the altar looks as though he has aged 10 years in the last 30 seconds. His sacred scroll is still on the floor where he dropped it. He looks from Dorothy to Gregory to Silas and back again, his mouth opening and closing with the slow, helpless rhythm of a man whose entire ceremonial training never once prepared him for this. Silas breaks the silence first. "You can't!" His voice comes out wrong, too high, too thin, stripped of the princely authority he has spent his whole life cultivating. He is still at the altar's edge, his eyes darting between Gregory and the rogue girl frozen in the doorway, caught between two impossible pulls. "Gregory, you can't just... She isn't yours either." "She isn't yours either." Gregory doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't need to. The words land with the quiet finality of a gate being sealed. "You forfeited your claim mid-vow, Silas, in front of every witness this territory has to offer." He glances briefly at the elder. The sacred law is clear on abandoned ceremonies. A waiting claimant may step forward before the congregation disperses. The elder opens his mouth, closes it, picks up his scroll with trembling hands and consults it with the desperate energy of a man hoping to find a loophole. He finds none. His expression collapses into resignation. "The law does permit it," he admits, in a voice barely above a whisper. Dorothy is still standing exactly where Silas left her. She is aware of her own heartbeat in a way she has never been before, loud, unsteady, located somewhere in her throat. Gregory's hand has lowered from her chin. He is watching her now with that same unreadable expression, giving her nothing to push against, nothing to read, nothing to use. "You don't have to agree," he says, low enough that only she can hear it. There is something in his voice that she doesn't expect, not command, not coercion, but something that sounds almost like waiting, as though he has been patient for a very long time and has simply gotten very good at not showing it. "You are mine." It is possibly the least romantic thing anyone has ever said to her. And yet, Dorothy Sawyer turns to face the altar, pulls what is left of her dignity around herself like armor, and says clearly for the entire congregation to hear, "Then let's finish this." The second ceremony is nothing like the first. The first had been months in the planning, flowers, music, the careful choreography of two packs presenting their best faces to each other. This is stripped of all of it. The elder reads the binding words in a flat, shell-shocked monotone. Gregory stands at her side where Silas stood 20 minutes ago, and if he feels the strangeness of the position, he gives no sign of it. Dorothy speaks her vows in a steady voice. She has always been good at steadiness when it matters. Her hands, clasped loosely at her waist, do not shake. Her chin does not drop. Only once does she glance towards Silas. He is standing at the edge of the altar, his blue and gold regalia suddenly looking like a costume, his face a geography of horror and something that might in a different light be shame. His eyes keep pulling toward the rogue girl, Kira, Dorothy will later learn her name is, who has not moved from the cathedral doorway, watching everything with an expression of sly, hooded satisfaction that Dorothy files away somewhere cold and careful in the back of her mind. She's enjoying this, Dorothy thinks. Why is she enjoying this? There is no time to examine it further because the elder has reached the blood mark. It is the oldest part of the wolf bonding rite, older than words, older than ceremony, older than the political machinery that has turned sacred ritual into diplomatic theater. The elder produces a silver ceremonial blade from the folds of his robe, and Dorothy offers her wrist without being asked, because she knows the rite. She was prepared for it months ago. She simply expected a different man to be holding the other end of it. Gregory holds out his wrist. His sleeve is already rolled back. She didn't see him do it. His arm is corded with old muscle, crossed with two faint silver scars that she doesn't ask about. The elder draws the blade lightly across both their wrists in turn, and when he presses them together, palm to palm, she feels it. Not pain, something underneath pain, a recognition deep and involuntary, like a door she didn't know existed swinging open an inch and then slamming shut again. Her wolf, dormant, quiet, the source of a lifetime of private shame, stirs, just once, like something surfacing from very deep water and then submerging again. She keeps her face perfectly still. Gregory's eyes drop to their joined wrists for just a fraction of a second too long. Then the elder speaks the final word, and the mark blooms, a delicate, branching silver line at the juncture of her neck and shoulder, the territorial signature of the Alpha King, pressed into her skin by the old magic like a signature on a document. The congregation is silent. Even her father, who has put his blade away, sits with his jaw set and his eyes forward, looking like a man calculating something she is not privy to. Silas makes a sound she will hear in her sleep for weeks. "Congratulations," Gregory says quietly, to no one in particular, already turning toward the aisle. His hand finds the small of her back, barely touching, more suggestion than contact, and somehow that is worse than if he had gripped her. "We're leaving." She doesn't see the mountains until they break through the cloud line. The Alpha King's palace is not what the stories describe. The stories say fortress, and they are right, but they fail to mention the way the stone seems to grow from the mountain rather than being built upon it, or the way the iron gates are twice the height of any man and etched with wolf runes so old they predate written language. It sits above the tree line in permanent shadow, ringed by peaks on 3 sides, accessible by a single road that winds up through pine forest so dense and dark it swallows the afternoon whole. Dorothy watches it approach through the carriage window and thinks, "I have walked into a cage." The thought is not entirely unwelcome. After the cathedral, after the silence of the journey, after an entire afternoon of being looked at by every person in my life with some version of, "You poor thing," or "What a useful sacrifice," the idea of walls feels less like imprisonment and more like a boundary she can finally stand behind. Gregory does not speak during the journey. He sits across from her, elbows on his knees, reading a document that she suspects is not actually about anything urgent because he hasn't turned the page in an hour. She doesn't call him on it. He only speaks once they're inside. The palace is warmer than its exterior suggests. Deep fireplaces, stone floors layered with dark rugs, the smell of pine sap and old leather, and something sharper underneath that she recognizes as Gregory's own scent, dominant and threaded through every room like a territorial signature. His staff is efficient and invisible, appearing only to take her traveling cloak and disappear again before she can form a question. He stops in the entrance hall and turns to face her with the expression of a man delivering a prepared statement. "Your chambers are in the east wing. My guard answers to you as they answer to me. You'll want for nothing." A pause. "The marriage is business. The alliance it preserves is real, and I intend to honor it. But I have enemies, Dorothy. More than you know, and worse than you can imagine. And until I can be certain you are not a target, I need you to stay within the palace grounds." Dorothy tilts her head. "You're telling me to stay in my cage?" "I'm telling you to stay alive. Not unkindly, but also without the warmth that would make it easier to accept. Those are not always the same request." She studies him. The closed architecture of his face, the tension held so habitually in his jaw and shoulders that he probably no longer notices it. He is not being cruel. She has known cruel men, and Gregory Smith is not one of them. He is being careful in the way people are careful when they have been burned enough times that caution has become instinct. "You'll do nothing about the rogue girl in my doorway?" she asks. Something shifts in Gregory's expression. Barely, a flicker. "That girl is someone else's problem. You are mine." It is possibly the least romantic thing anyone has ever said to her. And yet, Dorothy Sawyer turns to face the altar, pulls what is left of her dignity around herself like armor, and says clearly for the entire congregation to hear, "Then let's finish this." It doesn't make the cage feel less like a cage. "Business," she repeats. "Business," he confirms. "Fine," Dorothy says. "Then, as a business matter, I'd like access to the palace library and the ability to send correspondence to my father without it being screened." A beat. Something moves behind Gregory's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or reassessment. "Done. Thank you." She picks up the hem of her traveling dress and moves toward the east corridor. "Good night, Alpha King." She does not look back, but she listens, and she hears him stand in the entrance hall for a long moment after she is gone, the silence around him shaped like a question he hasn't yet decided to ask. She runs because she needs to. It is as simple and as animal as that. 3 days in the mountain palace. 3 days of elaborate, careful distance. Gregory at the far end of meals they take together in near silence, Gregory appearing in doorways to check that she is present and then vanishing before she can manufacture conversation. And Dorothy's wolf is making itself known in the only language it has. A restlessness in her blood. A crawling under her skin. A low, persistent pressure behind her sternum that builds all day and peaks at dusk. She has always been a poor shifter. Her wolf slow to answer, her transformations awkward and partial where her peers were clean and total. It has been the quiet shame of her adult life, the gap between what she was born to and what she could actually manage. She blamed Silas for it privately, told herself some part of her had always known the bond was wrong, that her wolf had simply been waiting for the right alignment. She is not ready to examine what that means now. The pack run is announced for the 3rd evening, a tradition in Gregory's territory, all pack members shifting at moonrise and running the mountain perimeter. She is told she can sit it out. She goes anyway. She shifts alone at the forest's edge, and it is not graceful. It never is. Her wolf emerges slowly, shaking off the long stillness like something climbing out of deep water. Small for an alpha lineage. Silver white in the moonlight, ears flat, getting her bearings in the cold mountain air. She runs. The forest opens up around her, the pine smell overwhelming and clean, and for 20 minutes she forgets everything. The cathedral, the blood mark, the east wing and its beautiful gilded cage. She is just a wolf in mountain dark, following the ridgeline, and something in her chest unwinds in a way it hasn't in months. The rogues find her in the low valley, where the trees thin and the moonlight reaches the ground. There are 4 of them, not Gregory's pack. Their scent is wrong, sharp and acrid with the particular edge of wolves who have been living feral, outside pack structure. They circle without sound, the way wolves do when they have done this before. Dorothy's wolf goes still. She is not a weak fighter. She has trained since childhood, but 4 against 1 in unfamiliar terrain with a wolf that has spent the better part of a decade half asleep is a calculation with only one outcome, and she knows it, and the knowing sits in her chest like swallowed ice. The first one lunges. She spins, takes the impact on her shoulder rather than her throat, snarls and drives back hard, and then the world splits with a sound that is less a howl and more a declaration of territory, primal and absolute and so enormous that her own wolf flattens instinctively before she can stop it. Gregory arrives like a storm arriving. His wolf form is massive, monstrous, the stories had said, and the stories were not exaggerating. Black as the spaces between stars, built like something that predates the modern age of wolves, his yellow eyes burning with a focus so singular and so furious that the rogue pack scatters before he even makes contact. 2 of them break immediately, crashing back through the tree line. The other 2 make the mistake of holding their ground. They regret it. Dorothy watches from 6 feet away, shifted back to human without entirely meaning to, her traveling cloak gone somewhere in the chaos, crouched in the undergrowth with her arms wrapped around her and her heart somewhere outside her body. It is over in under a minute. Gregory's wolf stands in the center of the valley, chest heaving, blood on his muzzle that is not his own, and turns to find her. He goes very still when he sees her. She cannot read the expression on a wolf's face the way she can read a human one, but she has grown up among wolves, and she knows the language of the body. And what she reads in his, the slow, deliberate approach, the way he lowers his head to check her over with his nose before his eyes, the way his body keeps rotating to place itself between her and the direction the rogues fled, is not the body language of a man honoring a business arrangement. It is possessive, raw and instinctive, and not at all controlled. He shifts back quickly, the black wolf giving way to the man in a single violent motion, and Gregory crouches in front of her in the snow with no cloak and the expression of someone waging a very short internal war. "Are you hurt?" "No." Her voice comes out steadier than she expected. His hand moves to her jaw, turns her face into the moonlight, checking for what her words might be concealing. His thumb rests at the corner of her jaw for a moment that stretches past what examination requires. Then he pulls back, stands, and offers her the cloak. "We're going back," he says, and his voice has returned to his usual controlled register, the possessive fury of the wolf buried again under the careful architecture of the man. Dorothy takes the cloak. It smells like him, pine and iron, and that sharp, dominant edge. She wraps it around her shoulders and says nothing because she is too busy sitting with the knowledge that her wolf, when Gregory's had appeared, had not flattened in fear. It had flattened in recognition. She tells him she's going to see Silas. She expects a fight. He looks at her across the breakfast table with an expression she has learned in 1 week to recognize as calculating rather than refusing, and says, "Take 2 guards. I don't want an audience. Take 2 guards or I come with you. Choose." She takes the guards. She leaves them at the door. Silas is being kept in the southern annex. Not imprisoned technically, but not free either, held in a kind of diplomatic limbo while the political fallout from the cathedral is still being sorted out. Dorothy has filed away 100 questions for this meeting. She has them arranged in order of importance. She is prepared. She is not prepared to see how he looks. Silas has always been handsome in the way that princes are handsome, maintained, polished, the product of good lineage and better tailoring. The man who opens the door to her knock is wearing yesterday's clothes, his blue and gold regalia replaced by a plain shirt and dark trousers, his eyes ringed with the shadows of someone who has not slept properly in days. He looks at Dorothy, and something in his face goes through several expressions at once, none of them simple. "Dorothy, I'm not here for an apology," she says, stepping past him into the room. "I'm here for the truth." She finds it faster than she expected. It is the tea on the side table, a particular blend, deep amber, with a smell that snags at the edge of her recognition and won't let go. She picks up the cup while Silas is still forming his first sentence, brings it to his nose, and the scent hits her like a physical thing. Moonflower, black root, and something under both of them that has no natural origin. Her blood goes cold. "How long have you been drinking this?" He blinks. "Kira makes it. She says it helps with the bond." "Silas." Dorothy sets the cup down carefully, as though it might break. "There is no bond." The silence that follows is the most terrible she has experienced, including the one in the cathedral. She explains it in pieces, watching his face as each one lands. The moonflower, which amplifies emotional responses to the point of delusion. The black root, which suppresses the wolf's natural mate recognition and replaces it with whatever external suggestion is strongest. And the third ingredient, the one that has no natural origin, which she has only read about in restricted pack archives, the kind of texts that deal with old, ugly magic, a fabrication compound, synthesized from the root of dark bondcraft, capable of manufacturing the feeling of a fated mate's pull out of nothing but chemistry and intent. Someone had dosed Silas, systematically, probably for months. Someone had handed him a fabricated obsession wearing the face of destiny and waited for the right moment to pull the trigger. Silas sits down heavily on the edge of the bed. He looks like a man watching the architecture of his last several months reconstruct itself in a new and horrifying shape. "She said she felt it," he says. "She said she'd been searching for me." "She was placed," Dorothy says. "She was placed, Silas, and whoever placed her knew exactly when and how to use her. She crosses the room and crouches in front of him, because whatever he did to her, whatever humiliation she is still carrying from that altar, he is also a victim here, and she is capable of holding both things at once. Stop drinking the tea, eat only from the common kitchen, and say nothing to Kira about this conversation. His eyes meet hers. There is a grief in them that she suspects is for more than just the lost mate bond. Does Gregory know? Dorothy stands. He will. She finds him in the war room. This is where Gregory actually lives, she has come to understand, not in the formal dining hall or the grand receiving chambers or any of the spaces that the palace presents to the world, but here, surrounded by territorial maps and intelligence reports, and the kind of organized complexity that only exists in the mind of someone who has been managing threats on multiple fronts for a very long time. He is standing at the central table when she enters, sleeves rolled, ink on his fingers, and he looks up with an expression that shifts through three things very quickly. Surprise that she's returned, relief, and then the carefully managed version of both. She explains it in pieces, watching his face as each one lands. The moonflower, which amplifies emotional responses to the point of delusion. The black root, which suppresses the wolf's natural mate recognition and replaces it with whatever external suggestion is strongest. And the third ingredient, the one that has no natural origin, which she has only read about in restricted pack archives, the kind of texts that deal with old, ugly magic. A fabrication compound, synthesized from the root of dark bondcraft, capable of manufacturing the feeling of a fated mate's pull out of nothing but chemistry and intent. Someone had dosed Silas, systematically, probably for months. Someone had handed him a fabricated obsession wearing the face of destiny and waited for the right moment to pull the trigger. Silas sits down heavily on the edge of the bed. He looks like a man watching the architecture of his last several months reconstruct itself in a new and horrifying shape. She said she felt it, he says. She said she'd been searching for me. She was placed, Dorothy says. She was placed, Silas, and whoever placed her knew exactly when and how to use her. She crosses the room and crouches in front of him, because whatever he did to her, whatever humiliation she is still carrying from that altar, he is also a victim here, and she is capable of holding both things at once. Stop drinking the tea, eat only from the common kitchen, and say nothing to Kira about this conversation. His eyes meet hers. There is a grief in them that she suspects is for more than just the lost mate bond. Does Gregory know? Dorothy stands. He will. She finds him in the war room. This is where Gregory actually lives, she has come to understand, not in the formal dining hall or the grand receiving chambers or any of the spaces that the palace presents to the world, but here, surrounded by territorial maps and intelligence reports and the kind of organized complexity that only exists in the mind of someone who has been managing threats on multiple fronts for a very long time. He is standing at the central table when she enters, sleeves rolled, ink on his fingers, and he looks up with an expression that shifts through three things very quickly. Surprise that she's returned, relief, and then the carefully managed version of both. She explains it in pieces, watching his face as each one lands. The moonflower, which amplifies emotional responses to the point of delusion. The black root, which suppresses the wolf's natural mate recognition and replaces it with whatever external suggestion is strongest. And the third ingredient, the one that has no natural origin, which she has only read about in restricted pack archives, the kind of texts that deal with old, ugly magic. A fabrication compound, synthesized from the root of dark bondcraft, capable of manufacturing the feeling of a fated mate's pull out of nothing but chemistry and intent. Someone had dosed Silas, systematically, probably for months. Someone had handed him a fabricated obsession wearing the face of destiny and waited for the right moment to pull the trigger. Silas sits down heavily on the edge of the bed. He looks like a man watching the architecture of his last several months reconstruct itself in a new and horrifying shape. She said she felt it, he says. She said she'd been searching for me. She was placed, Dorothy says. She was placed, Silas, and whoever placed her knew exactly when and how to use her. She crosses the room and crouches in front of him, because whatever he did to her, whatever humiliation she is still carrying from that altar, he is also a victim here, and she is capable of holding both things at once. Stop drinking the tea, eat only from the common kitchen, and say nothing to Kira about this conversation. His eyes meet hers. There is a grief in them that she suspects is for more than just the lost mate bond. Does Gregory know? Dorothy stands. He will. She finds him in the war room. This is where Gregory actually lives, she has come to understand, not in the formal dining hall or the grand receiving chambers or any of the spaces that the palace presents to the world, but here, surrounded by territorial maps and intelligence reports and the kind of organized complexity that only exists in the mind of someone who has been managing threats on multiple fronts for a very long time. He is standing at the central table when she enters, sleeves rolled, ink on his fingers, and he looks up with an expression that shifts through three things very quickly. Surprise that she's returned, relief, and then the carefully managed version of both. She explains it in pieces, watching his face as each one lands. The moonflower, which amplifies emotional responses to the point of delusion. The black root, which suppresses the wolf's natural mate recognition and replaces it with whatever external suggestion is strongest. And the third ingredient, the one that has no natural origin, which she has only read about in restricted pack archives, the kind of texts that deal with old, ugly magic. A fabrication compound. Synthesized from the root of dark bondcraft, capable of manufacturing the feeling of a fated mate's pull out of nothing but chemistry and intent. Someone had dosed Silas, systematically, probably for months. Someone had handed him a fabricated obsession wearing the face of destiny and waited for the right moment to pull the trigger. Silas sits down heavily on the edge of the bed. He looks like a man watching the architecture of his last several months reconstruct itself in a new and horrifying shape. She said she felt it, he says. She said she'd been searching for me. She was placed, Dorothy says. She was placed, Silas, and whoever placed her knew exactly when and how to use her. She crosses the room and crouches in front of him, because whatever he did to her, whatever humiliation she is still carrying from that altar, he is also a victim here, and she is capable of holding both things at once. Stop drinking the tea, eat only from the common kitchen, and say nothing to Kira about this conversation. His eyes meet hers. There is a grief in them that she suspects is for more than just the lost mate bond. Does Gregory know? Dorothy stands. He will. She finds him in the war room. This is where Gregory actually lives, she has come to understand, not in the formal dining hall or the grand receiving chambers or any of the spaces that the palace presents to the world, but here, surrounded by territorial maps and intelligence reports and the kind of organized complexity that only exists in the mind of someone who has been managing threats on multiple fronts for a very long time. He is standing at the central table when she enters, sleeves rolled, ink on his fingers, and he looks up with an expression that shifts through three things very quickly. Surprise that she's returned, relief, and then the carefully managed version of both. She explains it in pieces, watching his face as each one lands. The moonflower, which amplifies emotional responses to the point of delusion. The black root, which suppresses the wolf's natural mate recognition and replaces it with whatever external suggestion is strongest. And the third ingredient, the one that has no natural origin, which she has only read about in restricted pack archives, the kind of texts that deal with old, ugly magic. A fabrication compound. Synthesized from the root of dark bondcraft, capable of manufacturing the feeling of a fated mate's pull out of nothing but chemistry and intent. Someone had dosed Silas, systematically, probably for months. Someone had handed him a fabricated obsession wearing the face of destiny and waited for the right moment to pull the trigger. Silas sits down heavily on the edge of the bed. He looks like a man watching the architecture of his last several months reconstruct itself in a new and horrifying.
If Gregory's confession just broke something open in your chest, you're not alone. Drop a comment. Tell us what you felt. Subscribe and turn on notifications because the full moon gala is coming. The white alpha is rising, and the truth about Dorothy's bloodline is going to change everything. This pack doesn't miss a chapter. The letter arrives 3 days after the war room. Dorothy is in the library when one of Gregory's guards brings it, sealed with her father's crest, the wax pressed so hard it is cracked at the edges, which is what her father does when he is angry and trying not to show it. She breaks the seal and reads it twice, because the first time through she is certain she is misunderstood. She is not misunderstood. According to her father, 3 nights ago, a contingent of soldiers bearing the Alpha King's territorial mark crossed the Sawyer border without declaration and destroyed a grain storehouse in the northern valley. 2 Sawyer guards were injured. The storehouse, which had supplied the pack's winter reserves for 60 years, was burned to the ground. Her father's letter does not ask for an explanation. It demands one. And underneath the formal language, she can read what he has not written. Choose a side, Dorothy. Choose now, before I choose for you. She finds Gregory in the courtyard, overseeing the morning guard rotation, and she hands him the letter without preamble. He reads it. His face does not change, but she has learned his stillness well enough now to read the difference between the stillness of control and the stillness of something else. This is the second kind. I didn't order this, he says. I know. He looks up from the letter. Something in his expression shifts, a fractional recalibration, like a man adjusting to unexpected ground. You know. Your soldiers don't move without direct order, and you've spent the last week in this palace. Dorothy folds her arms against the morning cold. Someone used your mark, which means someone in your inner circle has access to your territorial seal, and they used it to make my father believe you declared war on his bloodline. She pauses. This is Kira's operation. The grain store is just the opening move. Gregory is quiet for a moment. The guards continue their rotation around them, professionally oblivious, and the mountain wind moves through the courtyard with its usual indifference to political catastrophe. Your father will come, he says. Yes. If he arrives here believing I ordered that attack, then I need to reach him first. Dorothy meets Gregory's eyes. Let me go to him, alone or with one guard, someone he won't read as a military escort. Let me explain what we found, the tea, the fabricated compound, the conspiracy. He is not an unreasonable man. He raised me to follow evidence. Gregory's jaw works. She can see the calculation happening behind his eyes, the threat assessment, the alternatives, the specific weight he assigns to her safety against the strategic necessity of keeping her father from marching a Sawyer army up the mountain road. If anything happens to you, nothing will happen to me, Dorothy says. He's my father. He's a pack lord whose daughter was humiliated at an altar and whose grain store is now ash. Right now, I am not certain those 2 things are separable in his mind. They are separable, Dorothy says, with a certainty she feels in her bones. Because I'm going to separate them. She can see Gregory wanting to refuse. She can see him searching for the version of this conversation where he can keep her inside the walls, behind the gates, within the perimeter where his wolf can track her. She watches him find that version and then slowly set it aside. 1 guard, and you are back before nightfall. Her father meets her in the border hall, which is not his warmest room. He's a tall man, iron-haired, with the same steady hazel eyes Dorothy sees in the mirror, and he uses the border hall when he wants to remind visitors or family that they are standing on Sawyer ground. She doesn't sit when he gestures. She stands, and she lays it out for him the way she laid it out for Gregory. The moonflower, the black root, the fabrication compound, Silas's eyes in the annex looking like a man waking from a dream he built his life around. She tells him about the rogue girl whose presence at the cathedral was not chance, but choreography. She tells him that the soldiers who burned his grain store were wearing stolen marks, and that the only person with motive to fracture both the Sawyer bloodline and the Alpha King's alliance in a single coordinated sequence is the same person who manufactured the rejection that started all of this. Her father listens. He's very good at listening. It's one of the things she has always respected about him. And when he finishes, he is quiet for a long time, looking at his hands on the table. You trust him, he says finally. Not a question. Dorothy considers lying. It would be easier, perhaps, a political statement, clean and deniable. I believe the evidence. She doesn't. Yes, Dorothy says. I trust him. Her father looks at her the way he has since she was a child, reading her like wolves read the wind, not just the surface of things, but the direction they're moving. Whatever he finds seems to satisfy something in him because his shoulders drop fractionally out of the border hall posture. The seal was forged. Yes. I had my own men verify the mark this morning. The proportions were wrong. I didn't want them to be wrong. A pause. I wanted a reason to be angry at someone I can afford to be angry at. I know, Dorothy says quietly. Her father stands. He crosses the room and does something he has not done since she was small. He puts both hands on her shoulders and looks at her directly, the pack lord submerged under the parent. Are you safe there? Yes. Are you... He stops, starts again. Is it... It's not what I planned, but I think it may be what I needed. I'll explain that better when I understand it better myself. He nods slowly and pulls her into a brief, firm embrace that says everything the border hall won't let him say out loud. When he releases her, the pack lord is back, but his eyes are warmer than when she arrived. Tell your husband, with only the faintest emphasis on the word, that the Sawyer pack stands with the mountain. She arrives back at the palace gates at dusk. She arrives to find the scouts already running. The message reaches Gregory in under a minute. The forest road is moving, not with travelers, but with wolves, rogue wolves, dozens of them, spreading wide through the tree line in the tactical formation of a force that has been planning this approach for weeks. The outer perimeter has already flagged 3 advanced scouts taken down by Gregory's border wolves. The main force is 20 minutes behind them. The palace shifts from stillness to controlled velocity in the space of a single horn blast. Guards move to their positions, pack members shift, the gates, iron, ancient, etched with runes, begin to close. Dorothy runs to the war room. Gregory is already armored, not in ceremony regalia, but in the functional dark leather of actual combat, his territorial cloak gone, a long blade at his hip. He is issuing orders to 3 commanders simultaneously and still finds her immediately when she enters the room, his eyes moving to her with an urgency he doesn't bother to mask. Your father stands with us. She moves to the map table. How many?
40 confirmed. Possibly 60. He points to the ridgeline on the map. They're using the eastern gully to split the approach, half at the gates, half trying for the wall's eastern face where the stone is oldest. Dorothy studies the map. Her wolf is awake and pacing, the restlessness of 3 days ago transformed into something sharper, directional. The eastern face has the servant's access point. 3 steps cut into the stone. They're hidden by the ivy, but they're there. If a scout with good footing. I know about them, Gregory says. I've posted 3 guards. Post 5 and have them shift. A human form guard at that face will be overpowered. A wolf holds the scent radius. A beat. Gregory looks at her with an expression she has only caught fragments of before. Open, undisguised, a warmth moving through the authority like firelight through stone. Then he turns to the nearest commander. Double the eastern wall guard, shifted forms. The battle begins at full dark. Dorothy takes a position on the inner wall, where she can see the gate line and relay information between the 2 flanks. She is not a soldier in the traditional sense, but she has been trained in pack defense since childhood. And what she has that the soldiers don't is the ability to read the pattern of a rogue formation, the way they move without alpha guidance, the holes in their coordination that appear when fear overrides tactical discipline. She is tracking one of those holes when she sees it. Kira. She is not at the gate with the others. She never was. The gate assault is a distraction. Dorothy understands that in one cold, clear moment. Kira is at the eastern wall, scaled above the guards with a speed and precision that does not belong to a rogue living feral. Moving toward the highest point of the battlement with a small crossbow and a bolt that catches the moonlight in the particular way that silver-tipped weapons do. Dorothy opens her mouth to shout a warning. Not fast enough. The bolt catches Gregory in the left shoulder from above as he moves through the inner courtyard below. Not a kill shot, But a silver-tipped wound is its own category of damage, the metal burning through wolf healing before it can begin, locking the body out of its own recovery mechanisms. She hears him go down. She hears the sound he makes, not a shout, just one involuntary exhale of pain, controlled even now. And something in the world tilts. She is running before she has decided to run. Down the wall stairs, across the courtyard, dropping to her knees beside him where his guard has already reached him, the silver bolt still seated in his shoulder because pulling it wrong will spread the burn. His jaw is set. His eyes find her instantly. "I'm fine," he says, immediately and obviously lying. "You're not," she says, equally immediately. "The wall. I know." She looks up. Kira is gone from the battlement, slipped back into the chaos of the gate assault, blending with the rogue force she commands. I know where she's going. Stay down. "Dorothy!" She is already standing. Later, she will not be able to explain precisely what happens in the 60 seconds between leaving Gregory's side and reaching the eastern battlement. She will remember the cold air. She will remember the sound of the fighting at the gate, distant and sharp. She will remember looking up at the wall and seeing Kira reloading at the far end, another silver-tipped bolt caught in the moonlight in the particular way that silver-tipped weapons do. And then something in her, the dormant thing, the quiet thing, the waiting thing, stops waiting. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive with ceremony or pain. It arrives the way a tide arrives, inevitable, massive, and completely indifferent to whether you are ready. Dorothy Sawyer transforms. Not the slow, partial, apologetic shift she has managed her whole life. Not the awkward half-emergence of a wolf reluctant to answer. Something else tears loose from inside her, clean and violent and absolute. And the wolf that hits the courtyard stones is not silver-white, not the small, uncertain creature she has known since adolescence. She is white, fully, blindingly white. The white of moonlight on fresh snow, of bone and starlight, and the oldest lines of Alpha bloodline distilled into a single form. She is large. Large in the way that Gregory's wolf is large, in the way that speaks not just of lineage, but of authority, of a wolf that the mountain itself seems to recognize. Her eyes, in this form, are gold. Pure gold. The rogue wolves at the gate stop fighting. Not because their commanders ordered it, not because of strategy or exhaustion, because every wolf on that mountain feels the emergence of a white alpha the way a compass feels north, instinctively, in the body, below the level of conscious choice. The rogues scatter back. Gregory's wolves, shifting with the instinct of a pack recognizing their queen, regroup and press forward. Kira, at the top of the eastern wall, looks down, and for the first time in this story, her expression is not sly or satisfied. It is afraid. Dorothy moves. The rest of the battle is quick, because this is what a white alpha is. Not just a powerful wolf, but a pack force multiplier, a presence that recalibrates the courage and cohesion of every allied wolf within range. Gregory's pack, already trained and disciplined, becomes something exceptional. The rogue force, already fragmented by the emergence of something their feral instincts classify as apex, collapses inward. Kira tries to run. She gets as far as the eastern gully before 3 of Gregory's fastest wolves and Dorothy, human form again and breathing hard at the base of the wall, complete the circle. She is captured, not gently. By the time the outer gates are secured and the rogue assault fully broken, the moon has moved 2 hand-widths across the sky, and Dorothy is sitting on the bottom step of the eastern wall stairs with her arms across her knees and her whole body vibrating from the aftermath of something that has permanently rearranged the way she understands herself. One of Gregory's guards finds her there. He is a large man, a veteran, not given to visible emotion. He looks at her with an expression of someone reassessing an entire category of assumption. "My king is asking for you." And then, after a pause that contains something like reverence, "My queen." Gregory is in his chambers, the silver bolt finally removed and the wound being dressed by the palace physician when Dorothy comes in. He is shirtless and pale from blood loss and silver burn, and he looks up when she enters with an expression that contains about 6 different things happening at once. The foremost being a relief so raw it bypasses all of his architecture entirely. "You transformed," he says. "I noticed," Dorothy says, and sits in the chair beside the bed because her legs have decided they have done enough for an evening. "A white alpha." His voice is not quite steady. "Dorothy, that hasn't happened in 400 years, yes, I've been told." The physician finishes the dressing and excuses herself with the discretion of someone who understands she is leaving the room to give space to something larger than her medical expertise. She watches her go, then turns back to Gregory. "You said my wolf was waiting." "I did. You were right. I think it was waiting for the right moment to be necessary." Gregory reaches across with the good arm and covers her hands with his. His grip is firm, despite the wound, despite the pallor, despite the physician's instructions that he should not be moving the shoulder. His thumb traces the branching silver line of the blood mark at her wrist, where it mirrors the one at her neck. "I need to tell you something," he says.
Dorothy looks at him. He has the expression of a man who has been carrying a particular weight for long enough that he has forgotten what it would feel like to put it down, and is only now testing whether the ground will hold. "I've been working up to it," he adds. "I know," Dorothy says. "Take your time." He doesn't take long in the end, perhaps because the battle has burned through all the elaborate scaffolding of caution and control, leaving only what's underneath. "I saw you in a vision," Gregory says, 9 years ago. I was in the north during the Rogue War, and the Moon Seer gave me a reading I didn't ask for and couldn't dismiss. A woman in ivory and gold, the Sawyer crest, and..." He stops, exhales. "And a wolf the color of first snow, standing on the mountain above my palace." Dorothy is very still. "I knew your name 2 years before you were betrothed to Silas," he continues. "I stayed away deliberately. The Alpha King's curse. Every person I have openly loved has been targeted. Everyone. I wasn't going to, I couldn't allow you to become a weapon against yourself, so I stayed away." His jaw tightens. "And then Silas was named your match, and I understood that I had waited too long, and someone else had..." "Gregory?" "Claimed what was Gregory." She squeezes his hand. He stops. "You came to the wedding." "I arranged to be the witness," he admits. "It was the only legitimate reason to be present in that cathedral that didn't require me to declare a claim I wasn't prepared to defend safely. I just needed to..." He looks at her with the expression of a man who spent 9 years being rational and is tired of it. "I needed to see you. Once. And then I was going to go." Dorothy thinks about this. She thinks about 9 years of deliberate distance, of a man carefully staying out of the peripheral vision of his own fate because he loved it too much to risk it. She thinks about the moment in the cathedral when he stood up and the 5 words, and how she had searched his face for the angle and found something she couldn't name. She can name it now. "You didn't step in to save the Alliance," she says. "The Alliance was a secondary benefit," Gregory agrees, quietly. "You stepped in because Silas handed you a legal mechanism." "Yes. And because you couldn't watch me walk out of that cathedral humiliated and alone." Gregory's hand tightens around hers. "No," he says, simply. "I couldn't." Dorothy looks at the man who moved mountains to stay away from her and then moved faster than anyone in the room when the moment came, who told her the marriage was business and then stood in the war room with his forehead against hers like a wolf who has finally stopped pretending, who went down with a silver bolt in his shoulder and still tried to get up to protect her walls. She leans forward and kisses him, carefully, around the shoulder dressing. It is not a complicated kiss. It is the kind of kiss that means, "I know now. I believe you. We begin here."
Gregory exhales against her mouth like a man setting down something very heavy, and when she pulls back, his expression is open in a way she suspects very few people have ever seen it. "My wolf knew," Dorothy says, against the side of his face, "from the blood mark. I didn't understand what I was feeling, but it knew." "It was waiting for a king," Gregory says, which is what he told her before, and this time she doesn't deflect it. "Yes," she says, "it was." The aftermath takes 3 weeks to settle, which is faster than it should, perhaps, but Gregory moves with the particular efficiency of someone who has been managing territorial crises for long enough that the paperwork is almost muscle memory. Kira is brought before the full council, not just Gregory's pack, but representatives from every territory affected by the conspiracy. The Sawyer lands, the Southern Territories, the neutral border packs who have been receiving falsified intelligence for months. Her real identity emerges under questioning with the relentless logic of things that were always true and only waiting to be exposed. She is not a rogue at all, but the daughter of a discredited pack lord who was stripped of territory 3 generations ago and has spent the intervening decades rebuilding a shadow network of displaced wolves and manufactured grievances. The manufactured mate bond with Silas, the forged territorial marks, the grain store, all pieces of a single campaign to fracture the North and install a puppet in the chaos. She is exiled to the Greylands, beyond the territorial boundary, where pack law ends and the old, lawless wilderness begins. She goes without theater, which is somehow more final than if she'd raged. Silas is a different matter. She goes to see him one last time, not for his sake or hers, but for the sake of the thing they were. 3 years, an engagement, the shape of a future she had built carefully and believed in sincerely, and which turned out to have been constructed on ground that was never solid. He is clearer now, the compound's fog lifted in the weeks since she told him to stop drinking the tea, and in his clarity, he is quiet and diminished and young-looking in a way she never noticed when they were engaged. "You should have been stronger," he says. "You were poisoned," Dorothy says. "Don't absorb the blame for a manipulation you didn't invite." "I still dropped your hand." "You did," she agrees. "There is no point in prettying that up. You'll carry that, but you'll carry it as a lesson, not a sentence." She pauses. "Your exile is Western territory. It's not punishment, Silas. It's a reset. Take it." He nods. He looks like he wants to say something more and can't find it. She doesn't wait for him to find it. There is nothing left unresolved between them, and she has learned recently not to manufacture wounds where the real ones have already closed. She walks out into the mountain light.
The second wedding is in spring. This is Dorothy's requirement, and Gregory, who turns out to be a man who will refuse her nothing she asks for and has accepted this about himself with remarkable equanimity, agrees to it without argument. She wants the mountain flowers, the ones that only bloom for 6 weeks between the last frost and the summer heat. Small and white and extraordinarily stubborn, growing in every crack of the palace stonework like they're trying to make a point. She wants them everywhere. She gets them everywhere. The ceremony is held in the palace courtyard rather than a cathedral, because Dorothy has complicated feelings about cathedrals now, and because the open mountain sky above the courtyard is the most beautiful ceiling she has ever stood under. The elder who performs it is not the shell-shocked one from the first ceremony, but an older woman, a moon seer, who performs the rites in the old language with the focused pleasure of someone doing the thing they were made for. There is no political machinery. There are no treaties being signed in the background, no alliances being demonstrated through the choreography of formal attire. The guests are the people who belong here. Her father, who cried at the gate when he arrived and has been pretending he didn't ever since. Gregory's inner circle, the commanders and advisors who have served him for decades, and who look at Dorothy with the particular warmth of people who have watched their king be alone for a very long time and are glad to see it end. Dorothy's gown is not ivory this time. It is white, the white she has earned, the white of her wolf, the white that is not the borrowed innocence of a political bride, but the genuine color of what she is. No elaborate gold embroidery, just clean winter white silk and the blood mark at her neck glowing silver in the spring light. And her hair? Loose. She walks to the altar alone.
Not given away. She decided that quietly, without fanfare, because she has been given away once already, and she is walking into this as herself. Gregory is at the altar in dark formal wear, without the enormous cloak, and the absence of it makes him look, paradoxically, less guarded. Just a tall man with an old scar on his jaw and eyes that find her the moment she appears and don't move from her until she is standing beside him. The vows this time are simple, because Dorothy wrote them. "I came to you as a consequence," she says, clearly enough for the courtyard to hear. "I came with nothing agreed to, nothing planned, and everything I thought I knew about myself in pieces." She meets his eyes. "And you told me the marriage was business," which was the most spectacularly incorrect statement ever made by an Alpha King. A murmur of warmth through the courtyard. Gregory's mouth curves. "I choose you," Dorothy says. "Not the alliance, not the bloodline, not the title. You. The man who stood up in a cathedral and changed history because he couldn't watch me stand alone. The man who kept his distance for 9 years to keep me safe, and then came running through a moonlit valley in a wolf form that is absolutely unreasonably large." This gets an actual laugh, including, quietly and briefly, from Gregory himself. "And who told me my wolf was waiting. You were right. It was. I was waiting too. I just didn't know what for." Gregory doesn't have prepared remarks. He is not, she has learned, a man who prepares remarks for the things that matter most. He is quiet for a moment, holding her hands, and then he says, "Every threat I ever made, every enemy I ever faced, every year I stayed away from what I wanted most, I would do all of it again." His voice is steady and low and means every syllable. "Because it brought you here, to this courtyard, to me." He squeezes her hands. "And I will spend the rest of my life being accurate." The moonseer speaks the final word. The mountain air smells of spring and pine and the white flowers in every crack of the stone. The blood mark at Dorothy's neck pulses warm and certain. Her wolf, fully awake, fully herself, presses against the inside of her ribs with the quiet, steady presence of something that is finally, completely arrived. Gregory tilts her chin upward, that familiar gesture, the first one, the one at the cathedral, and this time there is no political calculation in it, no crisis being managed, no 5 words needed to change history. Just his eyes on hers, and the unhurried certainty of a man who has been patient for a very long time and is done being patient now. When he kisses her, the courtyard erupts. Her father, who has definitely not been emotional this entire ceremony, makes a sound that is absolutely not a sob. The commanders cheer with the enthusiasm of people who have been waiting to cheer for something real. Somewhere in the upper battlements, one of the younger guards lets out a howl that is taken up immediately by the wolves on the mountain perimeter, passed from voice to voice across the peaks until it fills the whole sky above the palace. Dorothy laughs against Gregory's mouth. The Alpha King and his white Alpha Queen united kingdoms, united by a vow that was never, from the very beginning, about anything other than this. 2 wolves finding each other across years of careful distance and manufactured obstacles and one spectacularly ill-timed cathedral rejection, and choosing each other, finally, freely, under a sky full of spring light and the sound of their whole world celebrating what was, from the moment the blood mark was pressed into her skin, inevitable. The mountain flowers bloom in every crack of the stone. The story, at last, is complete. They made it. After everything, they made it. If this story lived in your chest from the first dropped hand at the altar to the last howl across the mountain, then you already know you belong here. Drop a comment and tell us the moment you knew Dorothy and Gregory were meant to find each other. Was it the war room? The valley? The 5 words? This pack was built for stories that don't let you go. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and share this with someone who deserves a love story worth waiting for. Because the next story, it's already coming, and it starts with a secret that was never supposed to survive the winter. We'll see you there.